A bus speeds down a winding road filled with second-year students from Midori Shino High School. Some students sing cheerfully, while others relax in their seats, unaware of the impending tragedy. Without warning, the brakes fail completely. The driver struggles to regain control, but the bus veers off the cliff, plunging into the abyss. The crash is devastating. Minus 21 students, along with their teacher, driver, and tour guide, perish in the accident. In a place beyond human understanding, strange, alien-like beings loom over a figure. They urge him to wake up, apologizing as they do. A skeletal figure stands nearby, informing Guy that the break is already over. He speaks cryptically of a village below them and something of great importance resting there. With an unsettling laugh, he declares his intent to use the power of his reincarnated friends, now monsters, to challenge the world itself. Meanwhile, a man named Hodman stands before his soldiers, confirming that everyone has been gathered without fail. The knights affirm his orders and he steps forward to address the villagers, announcing his mission with authority. He introduces himself as a member of the sealed monster extermination squad sent by the Holy Kingdom. The villagers, filled with unease, listen as he explains that a sealed monster has been sighted in the abandoned church. He claims it's a powerful entity that could break free at any moment, necessitating immediate action. The villagers, genuinely concerned, express gratitude to the so-called mercenaries of the Holy Kingdom. However, Hodman's true nature soon reveals itself. He demands that all village resources be gathered and delivered to him. He further declares that their homes will be repurposed as temporary quarters for the knights. His tummy makes me in doubt that he can actually kill the monsters. His commands leave no room for negotiation. The village elder, deeply distressed, argues against these demands, explaining that they have already paid their taxes and will be left to starve without food and shelter. Hadman, growing impatient, insists that these are only temporary measures until the monster is dealt with. The elder, desperate, protests further, stating that their village is their ancestral home and that without it, they will have nowhere to go. His words fall on deaf ears. Enraged by the resistance, Hadman draws his sword and strikes the old man down without hesitation. Panic spreads among the villagers as they rush to aid the fallen elder. Hadman feigns sadness, claiming it is tragic that some refuse to accept the divine mandate bestowed upon him and his knights. He imposes his will upon the remaining villagers, ensuring their compliance through fear. As the villagers scramble to gather food, a chilling laugh echoes through the air. A skeletal monster emerges, mocking the so-called holy warriors. Hadman, turning his back on the villagers, orders his knights to eliminate the creature. However, as he resumes taking inventory of the collected supplies, he is met with an unsettling sight. His two knights lay defeated at the skeleton's feet. The undead figure speaks with contempt, ridiculing those who claim to be divine yet fail to protect the weak. He declares that false deities must face retribution and speaks of reviving something called the divine death. The knights, shocked by the skeleton's ability to speak, recognize it as a special specimen, a sealed monster of rare strength. Meanwhile, outside the village, a group of knights hears commotion from the entrance. One of them points toward the source of the noise just as Captain Stringer arrives. He orders his men to remain composed, reminding them that they are the esteemed cavalry squad of the Holy Kingdom, prepared for any situation. If any disorder arises, he promises to personally decapitate those responsible. With strict discipline, he commands the knights to investigate the village and report back. Back in the village, Hadman, now livid, watches as the knights rush toward the entrance. However, something unexpected happens. Some of them become immobilized, their feet trapped in a strange, liquefied substance. A towering figure steps forward from the village gates. A bee-like woman, observing her prey with cold amusement. She declares that the knights have fallen into her trap and belong to her now. The knights, filled with terror, identify her as a monster, an insect-like being with an unsettling presence. The bee woman wastes no time. With a swift motion, she releases her silken threads, binding the knights. The more they struggle, the tighter the silk becomes. She warns that once the threads constrict around their necks, they will be dragged into her love nest. As she effortlessly incapacitates her victims, she wonders aloud if her allies inside the village are handling their respective battles well. Meanwhile, the skeleton continues to toy with the knights. A group of mages attempts to purify it, believing it to be reduced to ashes, but they are mistaken. The undead figure reemerges behind them, striking the knights down with ease. Hadman, still trying to grasp the unfolding chaos, questions the effectiveness of their magic. If the purification spells fail, does that mean the skeleton is truly invincible? Refusing to accept defeat, Hadman mocks the creature, believing that defeating a few third-rate soldiers does not make it powerful. If anything, he sees this as an opportunity. The stronger the monster, the greater the merit for slaying it. He unleashes a technique, striking the skeleton with 10 consecutive blows, shattering its bones. To Hadman, this is the undeniable power of mankind, a power of the blessed. The blessed are individuals of extraordinary abilities, elite rulers who dominate the world. Many high-ranking captains in the army are among them, wielding devastating powers. However, the skeleton reveals its own ability, restoration. Before the knight's horrified eyes, it reforms his broken body in an instant. Ahadman, momentarily stunned, decides that he will continue to strike until the skeleton is reduced to nothing. The undead, now bored of the confrontation, declares that his limit has already been reached. With a swift motion, he vanishes before Ahadman's eyes, only to reappear in front of him, piercing his chest. Ahadman trembles, barely able to speak, demanding to know who this being truly is. The skeleton finds it amusing that a dead man still tries to talk. Without hesitation, he crushes Ahadman's heart in his hand, ending his reign of terror. As the battle reaches its climax, the skeleton gazes at the moon above, proclaiming that its beauty foretells the victory of the Night Stalkers. Outside the village, Stringer grows impatient, questioning why no messengers have returned. The knights murmur among themselves, uncertain of what is transpiring within the village. Stringer, convinced that the villagers are resisting, considers making an example out of them. One knight suggests issuing an ultimatum. If the villagers refuse to comply, they will be executed. Before Stringer can act, he notices something, a gem embedded in the ground. Recognizing it as a seal monster's vessel, he touches it, contemplating how frequently these creatures have been appearing. The Holy Kingdom's army exists to exterminate such beings, preventing disasters before they unfold. The villagers, he believes, should be grateful for their intervention. Suddenly, a voice erupts from behind him, filled with rage. It commands him to remove his filthy hands from the gem. Before Stringer can fully comprehend what is happening, a figure appears and delivers a powerful kick, sending him flying backward. As Stringer struggles to regain his bearings, he questions how this mysterious opponent arrives so suddenly. The figure, standing tall like a hero, glares down at him, ready for battle. Guy stands firm, questioning whether the approaching group is from the kingdom's army. He warns them that they must withdraw as this is his territory. However, the knights find his presence suspicious, noting that he does not seem to be from the village. Everything about the situation feels strange to Stringer. Confidently, Guy tells them that they should worry more about themselves. The knights, feeling flustered and insulted, accuse him of mocking them and immediately rush forward, attempting to capture him. However, before they can act, Guy calls out to Dayan. In an instant, a golem appears and Dayan prepares to attack. Recognizing the threat, Stringer quickly alters the strategy, commanding the knights to change their formation. The magic squad begins chanting spells to contain the golem. In response, Dayan launches rock projectiles, striking the knights one by one. Stringer shouts at the knights not to falter, urging them to continue their assault. The knights charge at Dayan, slashing at it with their swords, but their attacks prove futile. Neither their swords nor their spears have any effect. Fear begins to take hold of them. Some knights, unwilling to die in vain, attempt to flee. Others shout at them not to run, but Stringer intervenes, allowing them to leave. Instead, he orders the magic squad to act. The squad executes a freezing spell, successfully immobilizing Dayan by binding it to the ground. Pleased with their efforts, Stringer rushes toward the golem, confident that its large body is useless before the power of God's blessing. Striking with all his might, he shatters one of Dayan's hands, fully convinced that nothing can withstand his attacks. A mere golem is no exception. However, before he can celebrate, another monster appears. It is an eye monster berserk, and without warning, it unleashes its magic eye restriction, rendering Stringer unable to move. From above, Guy descends, drawing his sword and swiftly slashing Stringer's arm. Before further damage can be done, the mages rush in, quickly casting healing magic to restore Stringer's wound. Recovering, Stringer retaliates, aiming to strike Guy, but the latter skillfully dodges. Berserk taunts Stringer, mocking his efforts, while Dayan asks if Guy requires assistance. Guy dismisses the offer, instructing Dayan to focus on handling the other soldiers instead. As Stringer regains his composure, he realizes that this is no coincidence. Guy is clearly working alongside the monsters. A thought creeps into his mind. Is Guy the one responsible for the recent accidents? Determined not to let him escape, he charges forward, unleashing a firebomb. Guy is caught off guard. He had not expected Stringer to use magic. This, in fact, is Stringer's winning strategy, pretending not to know magic and then striking with it unexpectedly. His tactic is to lure enemies into thinking he is defenseless against magic, only to suddenly overwhelm them when they attempt to flee. Once they are caught off guard, he eliminates them. As the firebomb approaches, Guy reacts instantly, leaping into the air to evade it. Stringer is furious. The timing was too perfect and Guy should not have been able to dodge. There is no doubt in his mind now. This man is using some kind of blessing. Guy, now airborne, retaliates by kicking Stringer. Despite his rage, Stringer knows that his plan should have been foolproof. There is no logical explanation for how Guy managed to evade his attack. It only deepens the mystery. What kind of blessing is this? Yet Stringer remains undeterred. If Guy's ability is limited to dodging, then there is no cause for concern. Without hesitation, he unleashes another round of fire magic, hurling flames toward Guy. He understands that if this fight is prolonged, the allied monsters might interfere, further complicating the situation. Though his primary goal is to capture Guy, he does not mind inflicting serious injury. Even losing a limb or two would be acceptable if it means securing victory. Berserk begins to panic upon seeing Guy being chased. Dayan too grows uneasy, realizing that this is not good. While Berserk resolves to keep the soldiers occupied, it instructs Dayan to assist Guy. Meanwhile, Guy continues running, with Stringer relentlessly pursuing him. Amused, Stringer laughs, convinced that Guy is now trapped. Up ahead, Guy spots a gate, a dead end. Panic sets in as he pounds on the door, hoping someone is inside to open it. Stringer approaches menacingly, making it clear that he cannot allow Guy to escape. Apologizing mockingly, he declares that there is no way out. Guy, growing desperate, yells at him not to come any closer, drawing his sword in defense. Stringer, unfazed, assures him in a sinister tone that he will not kill him right away. Smirking, he raises his fire sword, explaining that its flames will cauterize the wound immediately, preventing excessive bleeding. Guy, overwhelmed, screams at him to stay away. Just as Stringer is about to land the final blow, Guy abruptly moves, shoving Stringer against the door and driving a dagger into him. Stringer, stunned and uncertain, gasps, questioning what Guy has done. Before Stringer can react further, Guy is suddenly pushed back by Stringer's magic. With a furious yell, Stringer demands to know why Guy is siding with the monsters. But before he can finish, Dayan intervenes, dropping a massive rock onto him. Guy praises Dayan for his timing. Then, as if stating the obvious, he explains his reason for helping the monsters. It is because they are his classmates. The villagers, having witnessed everything, step forward, expressing their gratitude. Though Guy tells them that thanks are unnecessary, they insist on showing their appreciation for being saved from the knights. They do not know who that knight was, but his presence clearly terrified them. Guy then turns toward the sealed monsters. Berserk watches with curiosity, wondering who will be freed next. Guy warns them not to judge based on appearances. At that moment, Satoshi speaks up, suggesting that they melt the seal. These monsters, known as the sealed monsters, are not welcome in this world. The creature within the seal is one of them. If they leave it there, the church will kill it once it regains consciousness. Faced with this reality, they decide to fight. With a resolute voice, Guy issues the command for liberation. As the seal begins to melt away, he welcomes the newly freed monster to the other side. The classroom of the second-year reincarnation students, Section C, a man walks toward the two knights guarding the room. One of them acknowledges his presence and thanks Colonel for his hard work on the expedition. He states that he has come to request an audience with the Pope. The other knight informs him that the Pope is inside the room. This is the Church of the Holy Kingdom, Belfine Carlona. Colonel enters the room where Pope Pananteru of the Church of the Holy Kingdom lies on his bed. He greets him, saying that he has been waiting for him. He quickly apologizes if he has woken him, but he reassures him that he was eagerly anticipating his report. Colonel states that he has completed the mission following Lady Ashley's oracle. They have successfully eliminated the sealed monster in Gudo, and Stringer is now heading to Nobilia in the east. Panon listens to his report and, as expected, expresses his satisfaction. He is glad that he appointed Colonel as his successor and declares that the kingdom is now safe. However, he notices something troubling in Colonel's expression. He admits that while people believe he has accomplished the mission effortlessly, in reality, it was far from easy. The battle against the monsters was difficult, and they lost many soldiers. With trembling hands, he confesses that he does not remotely possess the strength to be like Lord Panon, the man who once faced 1,000 enemies alone. Panon recognizes the doubts still lingering in Colonel's heart. However, he firmly believes that he has admirably performed his duty by defeating many monsters. Since his appointment as his successor, he has been attacked countless times, yet he has managed to repel every assault. He is certain that he is strong and worthy of inheriting his position. To prove this to he decides to train his one last time. Colonel is taken aback by his declaration. The maid beside them grows anxious, reminding Panon that he last went to war 30 years ago and should not overexert himself. Panon, however, laughs off his concern, amused that they must think it absurd for an old man to train his successor. Colonel, despite his nervousness, does not dismiss his decision. His hands tremble as Panon claps, and suddenly everything around them disappears. Panon explains that they are now in a place where he can unleash his full strength and instructs Colonel to pick up his sword. However, he notices that Colonel does not seem excited about fighting an old man. Colonel can hear Panon's voice, but is unable to sense his presence at all. Panon comments that if Colonel does not come to him, then he will come to Colonel. Before Colonel can react, a hand emerges from below, grabbing hold of his leg. With great difficulty, he manages to escape from Panon's grip. It is impossible for him to comprehend how Panon, who has been bedridden for years, still possesses such power. He had always assumed that Panon retired from battle, but now, witnessing his strength firsthand, he realizes how wrong he was. Panon is said to be the strongest man in the world, chosen by the gods 70 years ago. Legends speak of him single-handedly defeating 7 ruling dragons, but to Colonel, such tales had always seemed like mere stories. Now standing before Panon's overwhelming power, Colonel has no doubt that those stories were true. He is utterly terrified, his legs trembling, his body refusing to fight. Panon begins to manifest multiple bodies, and Colonel has no idea what is happening. Then Panon creates an enclosing ring of fire, trapping Colonel within. The next moment, Panon uses Spectral King's Fall. Colonel looks up only to see what appear to be countless ant-like figures howling from above. Panon warns him to watch out, or he will be crushed. Colonel instinctively activates his Imperial Shield, but Panon simply pokes at it, calling it a pity. Suddenly, the specters vanish, and Colonel feels his consciousness slipping away. The scene shifts. Colonel wakes up in his bed, panicked. He immediately asks the maid what happened. She informs him that, from their perspective, he had simply been standing beside Panon's bed when he suddenly collapsed, unconscious. They had all been deeply concerned about what had happened to him. Colonel, still dazed, cannot comprehend what just transpired. Bro had lost his aura to an old man. Apologizing, he asks what Panon had said. The maid hesitates, saying she does not fully understand, but relays that Lord Panon claimed he had not even moved. He had done everything effortlessly. Colonel wonders if it had all been an illusion. However, illusions typically leave behind clues, changes in temperature, scent, or atmosphere. Yet there had been no such sensations. One of Panon's techniques was known to involve paralyzing poison, but the brute force that overwhelmed Colonel, along with the specters, was it all truly an illusion? The more he thinks about it, the less he understands. If Panon had used 2 techniques simultaneously, it only reinforces how unprepared Colonel had been. His thoughts shift to his own shortcomings. He had become too excited about being nominated as the next Holy Knight. With the succession issue growing more intense, he has been facing more attacks. If he continues at this rate, his future seems uncertain. At that moment, Colonel notices something strange. Turning down an alley, he spots several people standing behind him, their daggers drawn. They smirk as they state that they hold no personal grudge against him, but he must die here. Panon had not said anything specific to him, but Colonel now realizes the true value of their mock battle. It had been informative, revealing his weaknesses. The assassins chuckle, remarking that many people will be happy once he disappears. But Colonel does not hesitate. With swift movements, he advances toward them, slashing through their ranks. As the last assassin falls, Colonel reflects on Panon's words. What he lacks is experience. He needs to push himself into harsher environments. Even if Panon were to disappear, he will become the kingdom's guardian. He is determined to inherit this country and protect its people with his own strength. Shortly after, his knights arrive to deliver a report. However, seeing the aftermath of the battle, Colonel deduces that they have once again been attacked. He instructs them to handle the situation. The report concerns the expedition team's failure to make contact with Stringer. It appears that the entire team has gone missing. Upon hearing this, Colonel orders the knight to inform the formation commander that he will personally head to the site. Meanwhile, on the other side, Guy releases the sealed monster. The creature resembles a dragon, but confusion clouds its mind. It does not understand how it is still alive. It recalls being on a bus and is certain that it should have deed, yet here it is, neither dead nor ghost. Examining its body, it emisses long claws, scales, and a massive tail. Panic sets in, and it begins to scream, lamenting that it has turned into a lizard. Death would have been preferable to this fate. Rinken, watching from the side, remarks that this stage is something everyone goes through. Guy agrees, acknowledging that the new monster will need to be taught many things. However, before anything else, they must identify who he is. Berserk approaches the creature, inquiring about its name. However, the new monster, still overwhelmed, delivers a powerful punch, demanding that he stay away. He is not food. He has no idea what is happening, but is certain that he cannot afford to die now. Berserk, knocked back, immediately recognizes the monster's strength. The creature turns to Guy, attacking him next. Guy dodges the blow and counters with a punch of his own. Dayan catches the monster, determined not to die here again. In desperation, the new monster unleashes its dragon breath to escape. However, Satoshi ensnares it with her webs. With both Guy and Satoshi holding him down, the monster finds itself unable to move. Berserk activates his magic eye, further weakening the creature. Guy then approaches, assuring the monster that they are not enemies. He instructs him to look closely at his face. The monster finally recognizes Guy. Once freed from the webs, the monster sits in shock. He never expected to see Guy again after reincarnation. Guy, in turn, recognizes him despite their altered appearances, as the marrow on his forehead gives a clue to Guy who this lizard can be. The monster stands up willing to introduces himself as second year, Class C, attendance number 10, Team Furious Warsaw Captain, Stormlin. Takashi Gurney, a Yankee who proclaims himself the strongest in the region, faces an unexpected obstacle on his path to dominance. His challenge is met with refusal for the first time when Guy declines his duel. Irritated, Glenn questions whether Guy is afraid, but Guy simply recalls the teachings of his dojo grandmaster. His master has instilled in him the belief that martial arts should be practiced within the dojo and not misused in meaningless fights. He is only allowed to become a disciple if he promises not to engage in unnecessary battles. With that, Guy leaves, unfazed by Glenn's frustration. Glenn's minions question his next move, but Glenn refuses to give up. He knows that Guy has won numerous tournaments in jiu-jitsu, karate, kendo, and many other disciplines, earning the title of the strongest in their school. If Glenn could defeat Guy, he would solidify his claim as the strongest in both name and ability. However, Guy remains firm in his refusal to fight. Glenn exhausts various methods to provoke him, but fails each time. One day, an idea strikes him. Leading Guy to the old school building, Glenn expresses his excitement and presents his new challenge. Aware of Guy's promise not to use his hands and feet, he proposes an endurance test where they will compete using only their heads. This, he believes, will not break Guy's vow to his dojo grandmaster. Intrigued by Glenn's creativity, Guy accepts the challenge. However, before Glenn fully processes the situation, Guy suddenly lunges forward, using his head to push him back. Declaring that Glenn should stop bothering him if he loses, the fight begins. For the first time in his life, Glenn experiences defeat. This moment marks the origin of the woo he carries. In the present, Glenn acknowledges their rebirth, but questions why they have become monsters. He observes Takada Guyama from the weightlifting club, now a golem Tanaka Masayuki from the astronomy club, as an Evidai Yuan Linli Chen from the martial arts club transformed into a skeleton champion, and Amahara Satoshi from the crafting club reborn as an arachnia. Yet among them, only Guy remains human. Puzzled by this anomaly, Glenn voices his envy over Guy's apparent luck, but Guy dismisses the notion. To him, being human in this new world is not as advantageous as it seems. Guy contemplates their circumstances, noting that human bodies are fragile in this world, while monsters possess enhanced survival abilities. He insists that Glenn's new dragon body is far superior to his previous human form, citing his ability to breathe fire as proof. Extending his hand for a duel, Guy forces Glenn to acknowledge the truth. He was weaker in their past world, but here, he surpasses Guy in strength. Glenn, still eager to prove himself, refuses to yield. However, when he draws his sword to Guy's neck in jest, Guy's sharp glare quickly forces him to retract his challenge. Later that night, as they gather around a fire, Glenn listens in amusement as Guy recounts how he was the first to find his twin sister, Mew. As far as Glenn remembers, Mew was her name. Guy reveals that she managed to free herself from the crystal without assistance. He initially believed they had reincarnated into a foreign world, as Mew was no longer human. However, when they traveled together, they were suddenly attacked. A mysterious man, whom Guy later identifies as Dan, captured Mew, declaring that he had finally found the vampire bride he had waited 1,000 years for. Guy resisted fiercely, demanding to know why they were taking his sister, but they subdued him, casting him into a valley where he lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Mew was taken by the vampires, having been reincarnated as one of them. Slamming his hand against the ground in frustration, Guy trembles with regret, believing that if he had been stronger, he could have protected his sister. Determined, he vows to find Dan and rescue Mew, even if it costs him his life. Rinkin speculates that the Holy Kingdom must also be targeting them, referring to them as sealed monsters destined for extermination. Berserk adds that wherever their kind gathers, the kingdom's extermination squad is sure to follow. Satoshi questions whether a theocracy, such as the Holy Kingdom, would truly promote such brutality. Guy, however, concludes that they are merely extremists and devises a plan to outmaneuver them. Their priority is to rescue their captured comrades and gradually build their strength. Class 2C finds itself alone in an unforgiving world devoid of allies. Guy does not yearn for safety, but instead seeks a place where they can belong. Suddenly, a noise draws their attention. The girl, visibly distressed, runs toward them, pursued by two men who discuss her worth and the high price she could fetch. Pleading for help, she collapses before Guy's group. As Guy listens closely, he signals the others to hide. The pursuers, now face to face with Guy, demand that he hand the girl over. They appear hot-tempered and impatient. Before they can act, Berserk emerges from behind, activating the evil eye charm to brainwash the pigs, making them believe that it is unacceptable to be treated that way. The charm also forces them to recall a time when humans were nothing more than food for them. As the pigs fall into a frenzy, they attack, beat, and even eat the pursers before finally leaving. Surprisingly, the evil eye works. It triggers a memory in Glenn of a movie you once watched, where pigs were made to eat bones after disposing of corpses. Intrigued, they ask about the girl, and he informs them that Satoshi is keeping an eye on her. Attention returns to the girl. Satoshi, after checking on her, reports that she has fallen into a deep sleep. Noticing her long ears, the group speculates whether she might be an elf. The elf girl wakes up, still surrounded by monsters. Fear grips her, but Guy has already planned a technique for a situation like these. He steps forward and tells her that he's a monster tamer. Her terror increases upon hearing this. Guy reassures her that the monsters are his friends. The elf girl, realizing this is her first time seeing a monster tamer, apologizes. She notices how easily Guy communicates with the monsters and recalls how he defeated the Red Feather. She begins to think that a tamer must be strong. Rinken wonders why she might be chaste. Guy observes her fine clothing and guesses that she is from a noble family. Suddenly, the girl calls out to him, bows deeply, and urgently begs him to follow her without any question. As they start running, Glenn questions whether they can simply leave the girl behind. Guy, uncertain of where to go next, decides to follow her. Glenn, feeling uneasy, points out that something seems off. She looks like an aristocrat, and the situation gives him a bad feeling. Guy smirks at him, teasing that he seems scared. They finally arrive at a large Western-style building deep in the forest. It appears abandoned and in ruins. Suddenly, arrows fly toward them. A man warns that they cannot move any further. Guy shouts in alarm as an arrow nearly hits him. The man, leading a group of knights, orders them to stop, declaring that anyone who steps beyond this point will be seen as an intruder in elf territory. He commands his knights to shoot, but the elf girl quickly steps forward, announcing that they are not enemies. The man finally notices her. She introduces as Eamon and explains that she was being pursued by the Akabane Brigade. Guy saved her. She also tells him that Guy is a monster tamer, and that the creatures with him are under his command. She asks for this message to be passed to Deride, as she wants to introduce them. The elf knights hesitate, unsure of how to proceed. Then the door creaks open. A voice calls Eamon inside, but states that only the tamer is allowed to enter. Guy assures his monsters that he will return soon. As they step inside, Eamon warns him to mind his manners from this point on. The moment they enter, Eamon falls to her knees and bows deeply. A woman sits on a chair before her, Deride. Coldly, she asks why Eamon is still alive. Guy is startled to see that the two girls look exactly the same. Eamon hesitates but finally admits that she was afraid when the Akabane Brigade chased her. She didn't want to die. Tears well up in her eyes as she begs for forgiveness. Yet she questions herself. What right does she have to cling to her life? No excuse can change the fact that she has failed. Her voice breaks as she collapses, calling herself unforgivable. Deride's expression hardens. Without hesitation, she kicks Eamon and demands to know what should be done when a decoy refuses to accept its role. She strikes her, furious that Eamon has forgotten her purpose. She was meant to be captured in Deride's place to buy time for her escape. Guy, unable to watch any longer, steps between them, catching Deride's wrist. He tells her to calm down, blaming Eamon as useless now. The knights immediately react, stepping forward and ordering Guy to move aside. Eamon quickly speaks up, saying that Guy and his monsters are strong. That is why she thought they could help. Deride's gaze sharpens as she realizes the extent of Guy's abilities. Deride then asks if Eamon knows who is pursuing them. The answer is chilling: the Akabane Brigade, the most powerful band of thieves. 7 of their members hold gifts and have even defeated the army of Grancel, a powerful nation. Gillian, the leader of the recent coup in the elf kingdom of Susaria, is allied with dangerous people. Deride scoffs at the idea that a mere brat like Guy could stand against them. Without wasting more time, she drops a dagger in front of Eamon and orders her to take her own life. Eamon picks up the blade, trembling. Guy watches in horror as she lifts it to her neck. Before she can act, the door bursts open. Elf knights rush forward, demanding to know who the intruders are. A man steps forward, smirking. His name is D'Amato. He mocks them, remarking that the princess had been hiding in a place like this all along. With an arrogant grin, he announces that by the order of Gillian, he has come to retrieve the princess. Deride grits her teeth, her hands clenched into fists. The elf knights draw their swords, warning D'Amato not to take another step. But as they prepare for battle, a chilling realization dawns upon them. They demand to know what happened to the lookouts outside. D'Amato laughs, amused by their concern. He tells them it was easy. The elves outside are fast asleep. His voice turns smug as he informs them that the mansion is surrounded. There is no escape. D'Amato declares that the princess has no means of escape now and insists that surrender is her only option. He coldly informs her that all the elves outside have been eliminated. Deirdre grits her teeth in frustration. Domato adds that if she complies and goes with him quietly, he might consider sparing her life as their sole task is to deliver her to Gillian. However, Deirdre immediately refutes this as a lie. JB reassures her that she will be spared, but she knows better. To her, this promise is merely a more deceitful way of delivering death. She is painfully aware that there will be no king anymore. Not just the king, every single one of her blood relatives will be executed in a grand spectacle to symbolize the complete shift in government. The current restoration of the kingdom will be utterly thwarted. She refuses to let herself be used in this way. She cannot allow herself to become the instrument that nips Susaria's reconstruction in the bud. They continue to try persuading her, arguing that using her in this manner is preferable to execution, as leaving rebels alive would be a dangerous mistake. Gillian, they claim, would never resort to such a reckless plan, and she, the princess, will survive. Domata notes that while she is aware that Gillian started the rebellion, the people know nothing of this. According to this scenario, they wish to fabricate the elven king of the Four Kingdoms, Susaria, ruled his country with cruelty to enrich himself. Eventually, Princess Deirdre, hating this corrupt rule, rises up against him alongside Minister Gillian. Together, they defeat the evil king, and following this, she marries Gillian and establishes a new kingdom, leading to a happy ending. Hearing this, Deirdre begins to tremble. They promote this scenario as a solution that will bring stability to the nation. Deride trembles in anger as she shouts if they really think she will be a part of their scenario. Although she is unwilling to accept it, JB dismisses her resistance, stating that all that matters is that she remains alive. They will use a book poison, not lethal but sufficient to subdue her. All she needs to do is stand beside Gillian as his wife. Deirdre trembles in anger. Are they seriously expecting her to claim that he killed her father? There is no way she will allow herself to be caught in such a foolish scheme. Domato bursts into laughter, mocking her. Deirdre, furious, demands to know what he finds so amusing. Domato observes that she has not given up, but it hardly matters. Her only allies now are those standing beside her. That alone is enough. Before Domato can advance on her, the Knights of Susaria, the elven warriors, intervene, preventing him from touching the princess. The Clave brothers launch into action, executing a precise triangle/attack. Deirdre regains confidence in them. It was a stroke of luck that they were able to land the most powerful attack at the very beginning. This is a technique that has failed every assassin before them. No matter what combat skills an opponent possesses, no one can evade simultaneous strikes from three highly skilled swordsmen. Hope surges within her. If they can take down the leader, they stand a chance at victory. He is undoubtedly the strongest, so the three brothers should focus on eliminating the rest in the same manner. The three warriors charge at Domato, who reveals his unique combat skill, 4 hands. Against 3 attackers, he has 4 weapons at his disposal. Domato is delighted to put on a show for them. Using 4-handed Grace Moon transformation, he counters their attacks, striking all 3 warriors. He sneers at their strategy, mocking them for believing such a simple trick would be enough to defeat him. He even questions what kind of guards they think they are. He slashes again, determined to finish them off. However, Guy, observing the battle, realizes that he has stumbled upon an unfortunate situation. An assassin is targeting a princess. He recognizes that he has been caught in an unpredictable scenario. He contemplates his options. Should he intervene and save the princess, or side with the assassin? But he does not trust either party. Perhaps the wisest choice is to simply abandon them all and leave. Yet there's one problem. He cannot let anyone who has seen his face escape alive. Deirdre suddenly calls out to Guy, announcing that she is hiring him. He raises an eyebrow, reminding her that she had previously warned him not to act unnecessarily. She responds that the situation has changed. Reading his expression, she tells him that he cannot ask for anything in return. However, Guy has his own conditions. First, he wants to know the location of the vampire hideout. Second, he wants information on those who are aware of the sealing crystal's location. He doubts the Elves' intelligence network knows anything about it, but Deirdre assures him that she will fulfill his demands and tell him everything they know, if he can just buy them some time using the monsters. Guy then calls out to his army, swiftly cutting through the guards. Domato mocks the feebleness of Deirdre's protectors. With her usual defiant attitude, Deirdre warns Domato to stay away from her. Amused, Domato notes how much she despises him, but that only makes it more enjoyable. He believes the stronger the woman, the better the reward. However, before he can get any closer, Guy intervenes, sliding into position. Domato, irritated, demands to know who he is. Guy calmly compliments Domato's skills before casually stating that he is merely a hired mercenary. Domato, growing angrier, warns Guy that he will give him only one chance to step aside. Unfazed, Guy replies that he is sorry, but Domato's opponent is not him. At that moment, Glenn descends from the rooftop. He had been waiting for his moment and is pleased to finally be called into action. Glenn surveys the battlefield and asks if these are their enemies. Guy confirms that Domato is the strongest among them and likely the leader. Domato sighs before letting out a chuckle. He had sensed something strange in the air, but now he realizes it is just a lizard. This must be Guy's trump card, a mere beast that pulls a carriage. And yet Guy even went so far as to hire him. The realization amuses him. Glenn, however, is reminded of a past déjà vu of people mocking his name, Glenn the Storm. It was the same in that world and this one. No matter where he goes, he finds himself surrounded by fools. Glenn smirks. These people are just trying to act tough. He finds it cute in a way. But if someone gets too cocky, they need to be put in their place. If left unchecked, these types will steal or destroy everything important. They must be taught a lesson. He is determined to make them regret their arrogance and show them that in this world there are people they should never cross. JB rushes toward Guy, striking at him, but he blocks her attack just in time. He sighs, telling her not to attack without warning. JB argues that since everyone else is fighting, they should join in as well. She had been listening to their conversation earlier and knows who Guy is. Guy, however, is not in the mood to fight. He bluntly asks her if she is a woman. JB confirms it and demands to know why he asked. Guy simply states that he does not want to kill a woman. Annoyed, she challenges him, questioning whether he truly believes he can avoid fighting her. She mocks his ignorance, referencing charcoal JB, and tells him that his relaxed attitude is infuriating. She sneers, warning that there is no way he will escape. The entire mansion is surrounded, and no sound can get out. Guy only smirks, returning her words. He assures her that not a single mouse will escape, and today will be a special day for her. Outside, terror begins to unfold. Berserk is excited as it seems they have received a request to assist the elves. The entrance is under siege by bandits, and they are preparing to remove them. They briefly wonder if they should proceed, but is ultimately unnecessary as Satoshi is already there. She delivers 48 powerful monster kicks to Papudi. On a roof, Papudi realizes that the elves have even tamed monsters, but he remains determined not to fall before one. He slashes at Satoshi, causing her to fall to the ground. As she looks up, Papudi lands beside her, using his multiple clone ability. He hurls his axe toward her, grazing her cheek. The sensation of being cut down overwhelms her, yet she's unable to locate him. Papudi warns her to stop resisting, insisting that she is only causing herself more pain. Meanwhile, Guy and JB are engaged in combat. Guy considers himself fortunate as he now has the opportunity to fight the Akabane Brigade. JB rushes to attack, but Guy manages to defend in time. Initially underestimating him, JB assumed Guy, being a tamer, would not be skilled in battle. However, he appears more experienced than expected. Even so, it makes little difference to her. Regardless of Guy's capabilities, the outcome remains unchanged as their mission success rate is absolute. JB raises her hand, displaying the number of people she has killed. She stopped counting after 20 and eagerly anticipates engraving Guy's name among them. She then directs his attention elsewhere. Glenn is panting heavily. Concerned, Guy wonders if he is alright. Glenn reassures him, though he never anticipated Domato being this powerful. Domato mocks Glenn, questioning whether he truly believes he can win. He begins slashing, but his attacks fail to cut through Glenn's scales. Realizing his current approach is ineffective, Domato changes strategy. Utilizing his indestructible power, he forcefully slams Glenn against the wall. JB smirks, warning Guy not to look away. Seizing the moment, she strikes him, causing an explosion as the floor erupts from her gunpowder recreation. Domato acknowledges JB's skill, noting how the explosion burned Guy. JB, satisfied, remarks that killing the tamer was an easy task. Domato agrees, declaring that eliminating Glenn was just as simple. With their foes seemingly defeated, they shift their focus to the princess. Deride is furious, questioning whether the monsters will hold back the bandits for them. The princess's sole remaining guard steps forward, determined to protect her. Meanwhile, around a fire in a distant memory, monsters once sat together, discussing the nature of this world and why it differs from the original. Berserk believes that the difference lies in the sense of guilt. In the original world, even villains hesitated before killing. Perhaps they have been transported here because they have become monsters themselves. The value of life is remarkably low in this world, and he wonders if they are being influenced by its twisted sensibilities. Glenn, having punched many opponents before, finds himself contemplating whether he can truly kill. It is not a matter of justice. He does not care about the elves or his friends. If they die, that is simply the new reality of this world. Back to Presnet, rising to his feet, he glares at the bald man before him, intent on tearing him apart. Domato is shocked to see Glenn still standing. It should be impossible. He had used an attack enhanced with Shishin, amplifying his power several times with diamond-like strength. Yet Glenn remains unscathed. Realization dawns upon Domato. Glenn is no ordinary lizard. With a swift motion, Glenn unleashes his driving claws, striking Domato repeatedly, knocking him back. JB watches in disbelief, unable to comprehend the situation. Frustrated, Glenn grows impatient. Dealing with these small threats is beneath him. He demands to know how long Guy intends to pretend he is unconscious. From behind, Guy suddenly rises, furious. Cursing JB, he advances, causing her to panic. He was supposed to be dead. Before she can react, Guy delivers a powerful kick, sending her flying. Turning to Glenn, Guy acknowledges that they must deal with these bandits together. Glenn summons his ability, Purge the Filth. A blue dragon's breath engulfs their enemies as both JB and Domato scream in terror. The true attack of the dragon leaves nothing behind but bones. Amidst the devastation, Deride steps forward, praises them for eliminating the worst bandit group. She acknowledges their strength, realizing that even a mere tamer should never be underestimated. Guy expresses his condolences for the loss of Deride's subordinates, remarking that at least her life was spared. In response, Deride remains composed, stating that as long as she survives, nothing else matters. The preservation of royal blood holds greater significance, and if sacrifices must be made, they are insignificant in comparison. Glenn finds her words arrogant, especially in the presence of those who have laid down their lives for her. Guy, too, wonders if this is the essence of royalty. With that, Deride orders them to leave and escort her to her father. However, before their departure, Guy insists on knowing if she possesses any knowledge about the elves having the crystal or the location of vampire hideouts. A smirk plays on her lips as she confidently denies any such information. In that moment, both Glenn and Guy realize they have been deceived. Guy, frustrated, raises his voice in anger, for this information was supposed to be a reward. Yet, Deride remains unshaken. She coolly explains that she never promised them anything specific. She was desperate and offered what she could. Instead, she offers them money as compensation, stating that as royalty, she will do whatever it takes to reclaim the throne and restore Suzaria. Suddenly, the tension in the air shifts as Deride is pierced by a sword. The attacker is none other than Granhel. The elf mages cry out in shock, unleashing their magic as crystals emerge, aimed to strike him down. The mages rushes towards Deirdre as he demands to know why Granhel did that after being loyal to royalty. He reveals the tragic truth. His daughter had been killed in her place, sacrificed as her double. She was his only blood and flesh, and he could never accept her loss. Seeking revenge, he orchestrated more assassinations to prevent further victims. It was he who passed information to the bandits. He plotted to kill Deride that very night. The cursed royal bloodline should not persist, and he took it upon himself to end it. They should be grateful, he claims, for the justice he has delivered. The mage is stunned. He had believed Granhel's daughter died an honorable death, that Granhel himself was dedicated to his work. Never did he suspect the depth of his pain, nor that he had been tormented by guilt. Now, as Deride lies at death's door, he admits that he lacks the ability to lead his people. A figure steps forward, apologizing softly to Amin. The woman's voice trembles. Both Glenn and Guy watch, confused. Amin, her hands shaking, reassures her that she has nothing to apologize for. She is glad to have been of help. Deride, still breathing, turns to Amin with resolve. She declares that she will live on her behalf and that Amin need not worry about family affairs any longer. Then, shifting her gaze to Guy, she offers an apology, admitting that he was unwillingly caught up in their affairs. At last, she reveals the truth. She is the real Deride. The realization sets in. They had not completely escaped Suzaria as they had believed. Their location had been leaked and there was a traitor among them. To counter this, Amin and Deride had exchanged places, unbeknownst to Granhel. He had unknowingly slain the wrong person. Expressing her regrets, Deride states that they must leave before more pursuers arrive. The weight of those sacrificed rests upon her shoulders, and she refuses to let their deaths be in vain. She will survive no matter the cost. Afterward, Guy escorts the elves to the village where their allies await. Despite their safety, they are left at a loss, having no leads on their missing comrades. However, fortune favors them, as the very thing they have been searching for has recently appeared in town. The place is shielded so monsters cannot enter. Determined, Guy ventures alone to the town square. There, standing clear before him, is the crystal. Before him stands a silhouette, humanoid, just like him. His eyes dart around, scanning for any lurking soldiers. There are none. As he activates his ability, Liberation, the crystal opens, revealing a shocking sight. He sees Girl. The figure inside the crystal is none other than Akina, someone he might know. If you liked the video, please subscribe and give me a like to upload part 2.